and welcome to the Barboner TV network on ZINGOTV channel 250. Please remember to download both the Barboner and ZINGOTV apps in the respective app store on iOS and Android devices. Both apps are free. While you download them, please make sure to rate and leave a comment. And ZINGOTV is also available on Google Chromecast and Chromecast TV sticks, Amazon Fire and Fire TV sticks, Roku and Roku TV sticks, and also on all smart TVs 2016 forward. So first of all, we're gonna do if like you can tell that we have a different setting because I came to Mexico to see my family for the holidays, so we're gonna be here for a month or a little bit more. But don't worry, the show is still on. And wow, this show is gonna be pretty packed because we're going to take a look at the last event of the UFC's last event of the year. So we're going to talk about UFC Fight Night, Thompson versus Neal. We're going to talk about what's next for the Thompson and Neal if they win and if they lose. Then we're going to talk about something that that it has been like trending. It's a trending topic now. That it's are you as good as your last fight? That's a saying that I heard some months ago. And now, because Tony Ferguson lost his fight last Saturday, we're going to talk a little bit about that. And then we're going to talk about Jake Paul, your favorite YouTuber, in MMA. So he wants to fight in MMA. He wants to fight Conor McGregor, not everybody. So we're going to talk about that. And so let's start. Okay, so UFC Fight Night, Thompson versus Neal. Okay, so like I said, this is going to be UFC's last event of the year, and it's going to be pretty packed. We have 6 fights on the main card. So let's start with the. I'm going to tell you, like always, I'm going to talk about the fights, and I'm going to tell you my predictions, who I'm going to pick and why. So, okay, we're going to talk about the first fight, Marcin Tybura versus Greg Hardy in the heavyweight division. So Greg Hardy, if you don't know, is a former NFL player, and his run in MMA has been decent, but I think now he's gonna face a true challenge with Tybura. So Tybura is an experienced fighter with 26 fights and 6 losses, while Hardy has only 9 fights and 2 losses. Hardy, he's a heavy puncher because he has won 86% of his fights by knockout, while Tybura, he's a more balanced fighter. Tybura, he has won his last 3 fights, while Hardy has won 2 of his last 3 fights. So Hardy, he has been a controversial addition to the UFC's roster because he has a history of domestic violence charges. So some people don't like him as a person, and as a fighter, he has done like a good run. For this one, I will go with Tybura because he's a more experienced fighter. And let's see. And well, I have like a pet. Her name is Manchas. So she's going to be here with us, like as you can tell. Okay, Manchas, stop it. There you go. Okay. So then we're going to talk about Gillian Robertson and Tayla Santos on the women's flyweight division. Okay, so for this fight, Robertson, she has 13 fights in his career. She has lost 4 of those, while Santos, she's a more experienced fighter with 17 fights and just 1 loss. So this one will be an interesting matchup because Robertson, she's a submission artist, winning 67% of her wins by submission, while Santos, she has won 63% by knockout. So it will be like submission artist versus knockout artist. It's going to be pretty interesting. I love those matchups. So Robertson, she has won 2 of her 3 fights, last 3 fights, while Santos, she has won 1 of her last 3 fights. So this will be her 3rd fight in the UFC for Santos. And for this one, I think I'm going to go with Santos. I think she's the more experienced fighter. And yeah, like women, they're not afraid of throwing down, so it's gonna be pretty interesting. Then let's move on to the next fight. So, like I said, this is going to be pretty packed. So now Marlon Moraes versus Rob Font on the bantamweight division. So Moraes, if you don't know about this guy, he's an UFC veteran and he was a title contender. He's a very experienced fighter with 31 fights under his belt and 7 losses. He's ranked number 3. While Font, he has 21, but he only has 4 losses and he's ranked number 11. So, like this leap between ranks, this is going to be a tough challenge for Font. Both fighters are strikers, and they're very very well balanced fighters. Moraes, how about Moraes? He has won 1 of his last 3 fights, but he lost against the former champ Henry Cejudo. So he lost against the champ. How about Font? So Font, he has won 2 of his last 3 fights. Font, he hasn't faced like any fighter in the top 5 before, so I think this is a very tough challenge for him. And for this fight, I think I'm gonna go with Moraes. He's a very dangerous fighter. He gave us a great performance against the champ, and yeah, I don't think Font will pull off the upset. So I'm gonna go with Moraes. Okay, so now let's go with the next fight, which is going to be Michelle Pereira Lima versus Chaos Williams in the welterweight division. So this fight is gonna be like fireworks. So Pereira, he's a very experienced fighter with 35 fights, 35. While Williams is not experienced, he's only have 11 fights under his belt. Both are strikers, but William has won 55% of his fights by knockout. Pereira, he has won 1 of his last 3 fights, but then like on his last fight, he looked phenomenal. Like I was impressed, and I talked about him on the show. I remember. And Williams, he has lost his last 2 fights, but he also gave a hell of a performance in his last fight. For this fight, it's going to be very tough to pick somebody, and I think this is a coin toss on the air. But I think I'm going to go with Pereira. I really love his performance back in September, and I was very impressed by him. So I think he has everything to be like in the top 3. So let's see how it goes. Okay, so our next fight is going to be Jose Aldo versus Marlon Vera in the bantamweight division. So, as you can see, Manchas likes to be here with me, and she likes to walk all around me. So, okay, so this fight is going to be very interesting for me as well because, well, Marlon Vera, sorry, his nickname is Chito. He's ranked number 11, while Aldo is number 7. So same thing is a very high leap between rankings numbers. So Aldo is a former champ. I think everybody knows who Jose Aldo is. He was dethroned by Conor McGregor. He's a very experienced fighter with 35 fights with 7 losses, but he's very young. He's like 32 or 34, something like that. While Vera is not as experienced with 23 fights. And he was part of the Ultimate Fighter Latin America. And I followed that show and I really loved it. He didn't win, but he performed really well. And I really love his story because he fights because of his family. Like I think his son, he has like some sort of medical problem. So and he told everything about that on the show, and he has a lot of heart. And it's pretty funny because he wasn't the best of the bunch in the Ultimate Fighter, but he's the one that is one of the most successful, I think, along with Jair Rodriguez with Pantera. So how about Aldo? So well, Aldo, he's a striker. He has won 61% of his fights by knockout, while Chito Vera, he's a submission artist. He has won 50% of his fights by submission. And Aldo, he has lost his last 3 fights. So he's on like in deep waters now. He needs to win. And now that the UFC is letting people go, he needs to be careful. Vera, he has won 2 of his last 3 fights, and I love his last fight. He beat Sean O'Malley. Like, Sean O'Malley is a good fighter. I don't like his style. I don't like that he is. I don't know. I don't like the way he behaves. He doesn't behave like an athlete, right? And Vera like shot him down. Like, he did a really good job. But we have to be honest. This fight will be a huge challenge for Marlon Vera because he will be facing a former champ. And for this fight, I will go with Chito Vera, and I love his story and the Ultimate Fighter Latin America. He is a professional fighter, and like, he's fueled by his family. So I think he has everything to pull up the upset. So let's see how it goes. Okay, then let's talk about the main event of the evening. So, Stephen Thompson versus Jeff Neal on the welterweight division. So, Stephen Thompson is one of my favorite fighters because he's a karate fighter. I did karate when I was a kid, and I love the philosophy behind karate in the way you approach and the approach to take to every fight. So, Thompson, he's a very experienced fighter with 20 fights, while Neal has only 15. Thompson, he's ranked number 5, and Neal is number 11. So this fight will be a huge challenge for Neal too. And like I said, Thompson, he's a karate fighter. He's very technical. He has won 47% of his fights by decision. And he has given us great fights, such as the first one with Tyron Woodley. But how about Neal? Neal, he's a striker. He has won 62% of his fights by knockout. And now Thompson, he's in deep waters as well because he has won 1 of his last 3 fights. While Neal, he's on a winning streak. He has won his last 3 fights. So this will be interesting because Thompson, he's an amazing fighter. Like I said, he's very technical. He he's like a he's very smart. He's a very smart fighter. But the thing is that sometimes he's afraid of pulling the trigger, and we saw that on the rematch with Tyron Woodley. Like, honestly, that fight was kind of boring, and I thought Thompson had everything to win that fight, but I don't know why he didn't pull the trigger. Uh, Also, same thing when he fought Darren Till. I think he could have won easily, but he was afraid of pulling the trigger. For this one, I think I will go with Thompson because he's the most experienced and complete fighter. But this matchup is very interesting because it will be a striker, an explosive fighter like Neal, who's a brawler, versus Thompson, who is very technical. So if Thompson doesn't pull the trigger at the right time, he could get knocked out by Neal. So this fight is going to be very interesting, my friends. It's going to be like a very good way to finish the year. And the UFC had a great run during this chaotic 2020. Okay, so now let's talk about what's next for Thompson and Neal. Okay, so for Thompson, if he wins, I think he could face Jorge Masvidal. Like, he will be entering into that top five, and this will be a great fight for him because Masvidal is a fan's favorite. He has the belt, the BMF belt. I'm not going to tell you what that means, but you can guess. And it will be a great fight because Masvidal hasn't fought since he fought the champion, and both fighters are very popular, right? Or he could face Colby Covington. That will be a great matchup because it will be like a karate fighter versus a wrestler. That will be very interesting. And also, I know many people don't like Colby Covington because, like, his persona, he is a Trump supporter, the way he behaves, and I don't know. That guy is such a character, but he has like something to back up all that talk that he talks. Covington is a very good fighter. He's a very dangerous fighter as well, and he's a hell of a wrestler. So any of these fights will be very interesting, and I think they will help Thompson to become even more popular because Thompson now he has like his following. Like one of my friends, Nick, he told me about Thompson like 3 or 4 years ago because he had a great run as a kickboxer. So he's very popular, but with a small niche. So with those fights, I think will become like more popular and a fan's favorite. So how about Neil? So Neil, if he wins, he could be on the top three. Sorry, he could be entering the top 10, and I think he should face Michael Chiesa. So Michael Chiesa, he hasn't there has been he hasn't fought in a long time. So this will be a great fight for him, like to come back, right, and to get his name out there, because I think like 2 years ago, Michael Chiesa was a very popular fighter, and also he was involved. He was one of the victims on this boss attack by Conor McGregor. So yeah, he became like more popular. So this will be a good fight for him, a good comeback fight. So how about if he loses? Well, so Neil, I think he could face Robbie Lawler. Robbie Lawler, he was a former champ. He's a veteran in the UFC, and on his last fights, he hasn't performed like at his best. And I think that all the punishment that he has taken, has taken a toll of him. So now Robbie Lawler is in the top 15, same as Neil. So this fight could make sense because Robbie Lawler is an exciting fighter, and he is a former champ. So this fight will help Neil to become like a more popular fighter, and it will be exciting matchup because Robbie Lawler he's a striker as well. If you haven't seen his fight against Rory McDonald, oh man, you're for a treat. You have to watch it. It was a war. So those are the scenarios for this gentleman for the main event, and let's see what happens. And then let's see what's next. Oops, sorry, Manchas is she loves MMA as well. Okay, so are you as good as your last fight? So I would like to talk about this topic because on this last Saturday, well, sorry, like some months ago, I read a saying that goes, "You're as good as your last fight." So last Saturday, Tony Ferguson, El Cucuy, lost against Charles Oliveira in a well, he was dominated, right? So now he has two losses in a row for Ferguson, and I've seen a lot of posts like on ESPN and Facebook page, people saying that Ferguson is done, people saying that Ferguson is overrated, and I'm like, what are you talking about? People forget that he was in a 12 fight winning streak before fighting Joystick KG. He has fought the best of the division, and I don't know if you have seen his training videos. So he's a very talented fighter, and he's crazy. I don't know, like he's not human. So I like replied to those comments, and people are start like replying back, saying bad things to me, and I don't like engaging on those conversations in social media. But most of the people that comment on that are casuals, and don't do that. Respect the fighter. Don't forget. Like, can you imagine, not like competing 12 times and winning all of those? Like I said on some of my other shows, stepping on into the octagon is not an easy feat, and fighting somebody else is not easy. So, and like it's obvious, like fighters are allowed to have missteps in their career. A perfect record does not equal to be a great champion. For example, Robert Whittaker, he's a great example. He was competing at welterweight and he lost some fights. Then he moved up one division and he's one of the best fighters at middleweight and he was a champion. So it's something that the people get wrong by this. I have never lost any fight, but that mystique, like for example for Khabib. Don't get me wrong, Khabib is a great champion, but that doesn't, like, if you lose, that doesn't mean that you won't be a great champion or you're not a great fighter. So, do you agree? Are you as good as your last fight? Okay, now let's talk about this pretty funny thing. Jake Paul in MMA. Okay, so Jake Paul, if you don't know, I have talked about this guy in other of my shows. He's a YouTuber. He's very famous. He's won his second boxing match some weeks ago against a former NBA player. So now he's offering $50 million to fight Conor McGregor. And in order to get that fight, he has been pulling off all kind of stunts to have McGregor's attention. So yesterday, he released a video of him throwing water balloons at Dylan Dennis. So Dylan Dennis, he's a former training partner of Conor McGregor and one of his close friends. And when I watched that video, I was thinking like, MMA is no joke, right? This is serious stuff. If you're not prepared, you could get seriously injured, and it's not as easy as it sounds. It's not the same thing as boxing, right? So you have to train properly. Uh, like one thing that we could remember is CM Punk competing in the UFC. I don't follow wrestling, uh, but everybody was excited about having a CM Punk in the UFC. So he trained properly into UFC. His performance was terrible. I think he realized that the UFC is something else. It's not as easy as just stepping into the octagon and throwing punches. It's about training, give the best of yourself, and fighting someone who is doing the same thing or did the same thing. Okay, so, well, my friends, that will be everything for today. So remember to tune in uh, for the UFC's last event of the year, UFC Fight Night, Thompson versus Neal at 7 p.m. Eastern Time, 6 p.m. Mexico City Time. Tune in Mondays for results and analysis, and Wednesdays for prediction and analysis at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. Follow Barbonet Network at BarboneNet. We're on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. And remember, this is a conversation. Let me know what you think at Enrique Drums MX. This show can also be heard on the Barbonet Radio Network on its 122 platforms. Please check out barbonet.ca for all the news. Barbonet, watch it, read it, download it, live it. I'll see you on the